Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about playoff basketball. Is it different than regular season basketball? I'm sure you all watch a lot of basketball content and they're acting like playoff basketball is a completely different game than what's played in February and March. Obviously there's way more acute pressure in a single playoff game than there is in a regular season game, being that in a playoff game you are one step closer to the Larry O'Brien trophy if you win, and you are one step closer to your season ending if you lose. But does the style of basketball actually change? Is there a style of basketball that is more conducive to a 7-game series? I don't think so. It's the same game. You're literally playing the same game. But let's see if I'm wrong. Let's start with the tangible things that make the playoffs different. If you're a team that recovers quickly and playing back-to-backs don't really matter to you because you're young, this is of no advantage to you in the playoffs because there are no back-to-backs. Let's take a team like this year's Brooklyn Nets. Most of their star players are under the age of 26 and don't really care about back-to-back games. So let's take a team like the 76ers. If the Nets are coming off a back-to-back and the 76ers are coming off a back-to-back and they're playing the second game against each other, Joel Embiid and James Harden are most likely going to sit out that game and rest. While Nick Claxton, Mikal Bridges, Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, any of those, they're all young, you get the point. None of them are going to take a break. They're all just going to play the game of basketball because they don't get tired. While Joel and James need their beauty sleep. But now during the playoffs, the Sixers are up 3-0. I know Joel Embiid is not going to play tonight. I'm recording this on Saturday. There aren't back-to-backs and the 76ers are kicking the Nets' ass. Asses kicking the Nets' collective ass. Also, due to the fact that you have at least an entire day between games, you have more time to prepare for each matchup. You got time to watch tape of the last game and figure out what your opponent's strengths and weaknesses are. If you notice that a certain player can't use his left hand, he always goes to his right, you may force that team's offense to go to that player's left hand and force an easy shot because you know he can't do it. For instance, in the finals in 2020, the Miami Heat had no one that could go up against Anthony Davis. Sorry, Bam Adebayo. You're really good, but Anthony Davis was a monster that year. Erik Spoelstra noticed that most of the offense was going through Anthony Davis. So they switched to a zone coverage so they could easily double AD. The Heat were able to win 2 games on the Lakers due to switching their defensive strategy. Unfortunately, AD and the Lakers had a bunch of shooters that AD could dish out to, like KCP, Danny Green, and even Alex Caruso. But it was a good move by Erik Spoelstra. Another example from the playoffs that same year was Michael Malone and his adjustment against the Clippers. The Nuggets were down 3-1, but Malone noticed they weren't guarding Jokic at the three-point line. The Clippers' defensive strategy was to clog the paint and leave the other team's center wide open. In Game 5, Jokic drained 5 3-pointers, and he probably would have drained more if Ty Lue hadn't sent a guy to cover him at the three-point line. Consequently, this opened the lane for Bubble Murray to come in and drive and get points and dish out. This made the Nuggets the first team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit twice in the same playoffs. Another way the playoffs are different is the intensity. NBA teams play in the regular season to make the playoffs. Tertiarily, they play in the regular season to get a good playoff seed. But for the most part, the regular season don't mean nothing unless you're doing some serious damage in the playoffs. I remember in 2021 when Giannis was asked about the Utah Jazz, who are at the top of the West, what he thought of that team. He said they remind me of us last year. Giannis was saying they finished at the top of the league last year and they got bounced in the playoffs, meaning you have to be strategic about how you manage your usage. Giannis wasn't the MVP that year and he played significantly less minutes during the regular season, but they won the championship. The Bucks probably could have finished with the best record in the league if they'd made that a priority, but instead they prioritized their health for the postseason. LeBron started doing this as well in 2011. The Heat were a great team and they didn't necessarily need LeBron to do well in the regular season, or even finish at the top in the regular season. LeBron didn't play in every game that he was healthy and he started cutting back on his minutes a bit. LeBron didn't need to finish number 1 in the East, because regardless, they were going to have to play the best teams in the league at some point. It didn't matter what round they met them in. The Bulls were the number 1 seed in 2012 and they lost to the 76ers, an 8 seed. And then the Heat went on to win as a 2nd seed. So regular season basketball isn't necessarily the best look for every team. It's a strategic rhythm a team gets in to put themselves in the best position for the playoffs, both literally and figuratively. Literally as your actual seed and figuratively health, if that wasn't explicit. One of the most common misconceptions I hear all the time is that playoff basketball slows down because each possession is so important. This makes no sense to me. Every possession is only important because you have an opportunity to score points. If you're a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, transition is the best way you score the ball. You're going to run and gun every time, playoffs or regular season. You're not going to adhere to the basketball gods because playoff basketball is supposed to be slow. There's no clear evidence that possessions are slower in the playoffs or less possessions begin in transition. If you can find evidence that proves the contrary, leave a comment. and get my engagement up. If you want to make a case for the playoffs actually being a different game, you can say that they call less fouls and the game is more physical. While the game does become more physical because the stakes are higher and guys are more emotional, there are actually more fouls being called than in the regular season, which makes sense given guys are putting forth more effort during the playoffs, and teams are more likely to foul at the end of the game if they're down by like 10 points, because they still got a chance. Rather than in the regular season, if they're down 10 points, they're probably just going to dribble out the clock and take it out. The last reason a team might be better in the playoffs is the rotation is cut down significantly. The starters are going to play a lot more minutes because there's no sense in saving their energy if the season ends. Typically, teams play between 10 or 12 guys every game, but in the playoffs, this shortens to about 8, 9, 10. Tom Thibodeau and Nick Nurse are coaches that are known for playing their starters around 40 minutes a game during the playoffs, and sometimes the regular season. In 2019, the Toronto Raptors championship team played most of the playoffs with only 8 guys. In the finals, the 9th man, Patrick McCaw, only averaged 2 minutes a game. And the 10th man was Jeremy Lin. I bet you didn't even know he played on that team. He averaged a couple seconds a game in the finals. That's how much Nick Nurse rode his 8 guys. And they won. And Kawhi's knee is probably never going to be the same. Ultimately, playoff basketball is no different than regular basketball. The only difference is you're seeing the highest level of play and the highest level of coaching for each team. A good playoff team is a team with a few really exceptional players that can play a lot of minutes and not let fear affect their game. Thank you for being here. My camera is dying. Leave a comment, or subscribe if you like the show. Be good to your mothers, eat your corn dogs.